Hello, and welcome to today's episode of CreditChat Live. My name is Christina Roman, and I'm the Consumer Education and Advocacy Manager for Experian and the host of CreditChat Live. Now, today's a little bit unique because normally you would see myself or Rod behind screens. Rod is based out of Texas, and I'm based out of California. But today we are able to be together because we are joining you from the Jumpstart National Educator Conference, which is located in Boston this year. And we're doing a little bit of a unique spin on CreditChat because we wanted to take the time that we were here to get to know some of the teachers that get to participate in this conference. And so today I'm excited to share that we are joined by Sahvanna Mease. She comes to us from Calhoun, Colorado. She is a high school teacher, and she's going to share a little bit about what makes her school unique. But just before we get into that, I would love to know, Sahvanna, how long have you been with Jumpstart? And you are an ambassador, correct?
Yeah, so I'm an ambassador this year. This is my fourth year attending the NEC, which is super exciting for me because this conference is very unique and different compared to anything else teachers get to come to normally. But I've been a educator for 11 years, and so I've been using resources from Jumpstart and partners all 11 years.
That's wonderful. What kind of resources have you used?
So I love using like a curriculum. The last couple years I've been using the Teen Teach In that is sponsored by Jumpstart. And so I train my kids on how to create lesson plans about personal finance. And then they go out into classrooms, specifically in our elementary school, and they go and teach financial literacy concepts to elementary students. And so we use that program a lot. And I don't know, just a whole bunch of other resources that are available to educators of things that I can put directly into my classroom.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so we were talking before we got started a little bit. Tell us more about your school and the students you teach, the size of the school, because I think it's important. One of the things that we like to talk about is, we at Jumpstart and with Experian, we work really hard to try to reach communities of all sizes. And one of the challenges are smaller communities and rural communities. And so I think that's one of the really great things about this conference and about Jumpstart is it connects communities, whether it's an enormous city like Boston or a small town like Calhoun.
I specifically teach family and consumer sciences, and which is like life skills, all encompassing everything. And Calhoun actually did not have the program until I asked to bring it there because I was teaching in a really large school. So Calhoun's about 45 minutes east of Colorado Springs. And we are classified as small rural, as majority of schools in Colorado are actually classified as rural. And then it's just like the different designations of how big that rural school looks like. And so we're small rural. We have about 350 students in our entire district, which is all in one building. And so we have about 110 students in the high school specifically that I teach. And I end up seeing all of the high school students a couple times throughout their high school career. I see all freshmen, and then I see 99% of the seniors.
Wow.
So
What was it about the program that made you want to specifically bring it to Calhoun?
teaching life skills to students is so important. That's why I really love family consumer science, which is also why I can never teach anything else. And my husband is actually from Calhoun. He is a fourth generation graduate from Calhoun. His grandma was one of the first students there. And so there's like very specific memoir things that are there from when she was a student at the school, which is special. And so when I met my husband, I was a city girl and went to college. We decided to move back because I craved that small town feeling. And Calhoun didn't have anything that was, they were teaching obviously skills, and they had like an FFA program. So teaching rural skills, teaching students how to raise animals and have businesses, but there was not any of the like life aspects to the curriculum. And so bringing in family and consumer sciences really helps integrate all of the other contents and make it more applicable to every single student's life, whether they're going to go to college or they're going to stay in the small town and take over the family farm. And I wanted to be a part of that. And so that's how I could bring my skill set to not only teaching hopefully my son in the future, because he also goes to the school, but some of my, like, they're all cousins. A lot of the kids that go to school are related in some way because that's how small towns work. And so I wanted to just be a part of that.
Yeah. What does the curriculum look like in this class?
So for personal finance specifically, I teach 2 different kind of levels. So I teach a career pathways class to freshmen. And this is a very intro, like how to get your first job class. Mm-hmm. So we have all of our freshmen go through it. They learn about filling out paperwork. So they learn like, what is an I-9? They learn about W-4s. They practice writing their address and their phone number because they don't know how or what it is. And so then I'm like, you need this information when you come out of school. And so we do all of that. And then we focus on like writing resumes and cover letters. They're not great because they're freshmen, but it's a good start so that we can edit it as they go through school. And we do like job interview skills. And then I really focus like the whole last quarter of the class is specifically on soft skills and like, how are you going to get a job in whatever industry it is that you want to go into? And then I teach a senior level class called life management. And that one is all the applied personal finance. And I like to really talk about how it's more in the applied instance. Like, yes, we can teach about stocks and we can teach about interest in credit cards, but if I'm not getting my kids interacting with it, they're never going to use it. They're not going to remember how to use it. So I still teach them how to write a check, and I still teach them how to, like today, my sub-plan is that they are doing an online bank simulator. And so they're going in, majority of my students don't have checking accounts and they're seniors. And so they're going into a checking account and practicing making deposits and taking money out and paying bills because they need that actual practice to be able to leave high school confident that they can be adults and not make crazy financial decisions.
I got to say, I still have my FFA jacket.
Yeah.
Can't get, I think, one arm in it, but I still have it. But you mentioned thinking about that in a rural community. How is talking about finance different? Because I know, in my background, farming family, small town communities. My niece and nephew farm 6,000 acres in western Kansas. So it's part of the family, and it can be very different in a small town than it is in a big city. Can you tell us a little bit about how teaching personal finance may be different and around credit or other kinds of relationships?
Yeah, so I did not grow up in a small town. So coming into it and learning about what is FFA, and almost every student I have has animals that I don't have. And so they have all been running mini businesses of raising their animals and selling them with 4-H since they were 5 or 6 years old. And so I think teaching personal finance in a way that shows students how they can be financially sound and like make their futures work for them, not against them, is really important because they all have their own businesses. And especially with how I think the economy is kind of switching, and it is really hard for farmers and ranchers and them to have those types of businesses in the industry of what it looks like now. Is extremely challenging. I mean, we see farms and businesses selling and going under all of the time because they really just want to sell out the land and build more houses on it. Well, we need to have actual like animals and produce and things like that to continue to provide for those houses. And so getting students to think about, like, they go and they sell their animals and then they get a $15,000 check because they sold a champion steer. Well, then now what are you going to do with that money? And how are you going to make it actually last? And how are you going to reinvest that? But then also, how are you not going to blow it? Because a lot of them, they sometimes want to blow it, and it's on things that teenagers want to buy their money on, like coffee and soda and candy because they're still kids. But a lot of them do know that they have to reinvest. And so talking about it in a little bit of a different way. But we also talk about credit and how credit is all about how well a company trusts you, because we talk about the credit worthiness, but we talk about that in the same way of small towns building credit with each other. You're not going to go buy hay from somebody that burned down someone else's building. And so
This is a small town real in reality that
like,
who's doing what. Yeah.
And so when they actually build those relationships, we know that they know that you do business with certain people and not business with other people because there's small town drama going on, but also that's how outside in actual cities, or when they're going to get credit, or try to buy a house and they need an actual mortgage, industries and people who make their credit scores that don't know them personally, they're trying to look at them in the same way as how they look at the sale barn or how they look at buying from a friend. They're going to look at those same type of things and characteristics. And so we try to just make it more applied to them in that way. But it is definitely way different than teaching in a big city.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I can remember when I lived in a little town out in western Kansas that there was a man named George who owned the men's clothing store, and he owned the women's clothing store across the street. But I'd see him at dinner at a restaurant and he'd say, hey, I have this shirt or gloves, and he would know exactly what I had. Walked in one day and saw him and I walked into his store and he said, I have a hat you would like. And he wasn't wrong. And I said, but I don't have any cash with me. He said, take it, you'll get for it later. That still happens.
Yeah.
And it's a very different kind of life. And it's driven a lot around harvest. And so big chunks of money and then a year of growing crops. And so it's a different way to think about credit and the way it works. Also, another question I have is, you think about and talk about business credit. So as an ag operation, they are a business, often big business. Do you talk about building business credit, so business credit history, that sort of thing as well? I mean, we think about Experian as being a credit bureau for consumers, where we also have business credit. We have fraud and ID theft tools and resources. We have data around all sorts of things that help people be more financially healthy. Do those kinds of topics come up in your discussions?
Yeah, they come up a little bit, especially as my seniors get older, and I talk to them about is this doing your 4-H projects? Is this something that you want to continue, or is this something that you're just doing because everybody in your family has always done it, or is it something that you're passionate about and want to continue doing in your life? And so those students who really are passionate and that is what they want to do, they want to be a rancher, they want to take over a family business, then we can point them in the direction of having more resources to get more in detail. But this year we actually did just start an ag business class that then those students can go and get a more directly applied personal finance perspective, specifically on ag business, which is really, I think, so important for kids, because I can't give them, I could give them information, but I never raised my own animals and sold them. And so coming from me is not the best source, I think, of information. But being able to put them with people who that is their reality is really, really important. But making sure that I think that's the hard thing is those teachers, I don't think, would get those resources that I know are out there unless they're coming to things like this, or they have somebody that can share those resources, because sharing those resources with the educator, or even the CTSO, so the career technical student organizations, so that they could distribute that information to their teachers, I think is really important. And so reaching out to FFA and being hey, we have all of these resources. We know that your teachers are teaching this content. Can you please share this? Otherwise, those teachers were so busy that it's really hard to know all of the new things that are constantly being created.
Yeah.
And that's Just a couple more thoughts. So yeah, and I spent an hour talking about the economics of wheat versus corn with my nephew one time. So things you don't think about in business. But you mentioned this conference is different than others. How is it different? What makes it different?
I have gone to a lot of conferences. So I'm a Family Career and Community Leaders of America advisor, so FCCLA. And I take students to conferences all the time. I help plan FCS educator conferences. And everything is sometimes we plan conferences that is sit and get. And then you just sit there and you listen to someone talk at you, and then you have information, and you go back and you have no time to figure out how are you going to apply all of these things. Here it is. I shared this morning that this conference is one of the first places that I have felt like an adult, because I'm treated like an adult and I'm treated like a professional, which when you're stuck around teenagers all day, every day, can sometimes be hard to remember that you are like a professional that other people look at as someone who is very influential on children. And the Jumpstart staff does a really great job of spoiling us. And so I love being able to walk into a reception that other industries, that is normal. They have receptions where there is adults mingling and there are appetizers being walked around. In the education world, that's not a thing. I'm just thankful if bodily fluids are on me that day. And so it is really, really nice to be invited to a space that is so formal, but also relaxing, and because people just want to have fun and they want to get to know us. And all of the presenters that they bring in, I feel like everyone does a very, very good job of giving teachers information of this is how you can walk away and put it into your classroom tomorrow. So when I go back on Tuesday, I can actually implement a lesson that I learned here at this conference. And I've done that. I'm not the strongest in investing. It's just an area of teaching that I still struggle in. And so I love being able to sit through some investment talks of people who this is their job and they're passionate about it. And then I can bring some of that passion back because they gave me a very specific tool of something that I can do in my classroom the next day without any other prep work. And that's what I love, because I don't have to do all of the brain work of figuring out how to incorporate it into my classroom.
Cool.
Yep, I love that. One thing I wanted to talk about was Colorado just launched a new financial literacy requirement for high school seniors when they're graduating. And what does that mean for you and your vision of financial literacy?
Yeah, I am one of the teachers that is super in support of that. I did not take a personal finance class when I was in high school. I took one personal finance class when I was in college, and then has now been deemed all knowledge worthy of being able to teach children personal finance. And so I had to do a lot of learning on my own. I did not make great decisions when I first got out of college with my finances, and got into some trouble and had to build myself back out of that. And so I feel like if I would have known what I know now in high school, I wouldn't have had to wait so long to get to a financial place where we are with our family. I could have started that way. And so I think that it's so important. And the thing that I really want the state to make sure that they do as we execute this requirement, as other states have done as well, is don't pigeonhole it. And I don't want one teacher or one subject category being the sole responsible person of educating children on personal finance. Because sometimes they do that. They're like, okay, now it's just going to be the history economics teachers that are going to be allowed to teach this personal finance class. I think that family consumer science teachers can do a really great job at doing it, or ag teachers who are teaching a ag business class that reaches all of the financial literacy standards can do a really great job at reaching the students that they see, because they know what their futures are going to look like, versus it just being this blanket class that one random teacher who had one class in college and is not really passionate about it. I don't want it to go that direction. So I really hope that they keep an open mind of what that can look like. And that's going to come down to districts of what they allow and what they don't. But that guidance is going to come from the state because that guidance piece hasn't been rolled out yet fully of what it is going to look like in it. And there's some teachers that are really scared and they're like, we don't know what this is going to do now. Like, is my job going to be okay? Or is this like, are we going to have to give different FTE funding to hire a teacher to do this thing? And in some schools, that's what it's going to look like because there's going to have to be teachers that have full course loads of teaching personal finance. So there is that kind of negative sense of like details that you have to be figured out. But I think that it can be executed really well. There's already people doing it. And so they just have to make sure that those people that are doing it have the resources that they need to flush it out.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
That's super important. And I love that you touched on your own background because that further emphasizes Rod and I both have that same background right out of college.
Same story.
Made every mistake, and had to work to build ourselves back up. But that's why I'm super passionate about this work and the work that you are doing and that you're on the front lines, making sure that, these students have access to these resources. And it's so important so that hopefully, to your point, they don't make the mistakes that we made.
Yeah.
Now, I would love to know, has there been a moment when you're teaching financial literacy that was like that? They're getting it, a special moment that stands out to you that you could share?
Yeah, I think I have lots of those because a lot of times in my classroom is the first time that anyone's ever talked to them about money. I feel like a lot of parents right now with the generation that is in high school are very guarded with talks about finances. They don't want them to know what the actual situation is. And whether that's really good, because we have some really well-off families who still are very kind of secretive about what their money situation looks like. And then we have families who are really struggling and their kids have to help provide for their family that still don't really give all the details. And so I think that me as an educator, I'm very transparent. I just tell my students like my personal life experiences because it makes them know that it's real. And I'm not going to lie to them. They ask me if I have stocks and things, and I'm like, no. I'm just going to tell you straight up, I don't have a stock in that thing because I don't know anything about it. But do I have a retirement account that we make sure that we put money into? Do I make sure that I'm paying off debt? Yes. What does debt look like? And so being real is super important. And one of my most recent, super exciting experiences has been one of my students took EverFi has partnered with FCCLA and they now have a personal finance star event. So it's a competitive event that students can do. One of my students is doing it. She's actually not going to compete because she's a state officer. So she's not technically allowed to, but she's doing it in my classroom as a project because I do it as a final. And it's all about creating a budget for herself. So she created this budget. She got a job for the first time. And so she's like, I'm going to set aside this amount of money for college next year. And I need to have this kind of emergency fund set aside by the end of the year. Well, in the first month, she reached her goal. And she was like, well, now what? And I'm like, well, your goal was too easy. So now you need to make it harder. And so now she's actually going this month to have a conversation about opening her own investment account because she's like, now I already have this nest egg of emergency funds for college. Now, if it can work for me, then I don't have to keep doing this. And I was like, exactly. That's what the goal of this conversation is for you to be able to set goals for yourself, figure out what kind of savings strategy works best for you as an individual. Because I can't save cash. If I save cash, it's girl math money and I'm going to spend it, right? I'm real with kids.
Yes.
But if I have a separate account that I don't look at and I put money into that, then that's the best way that I'm going to save. She likes to save cash. And so, or other students really like to save cash and they put it away. And so just having those conversations, finance is figuring out what works best for you.
Yes.
And it's not a one size fits all game. And so you're going to have to figure out what works best for you. What is your girl math thing? And make sure that you address it because everybody has their thing, right? That money is imaginary in this one instance of my life or area of my life. So figure it out now so that you can make sure it doesn't become a problem for you in the future and you can work your way around it.
Yeah, I think my husband's girl math thing is silent auctions. I don't know. He loves to bid on silent auctions.
There's guy math too, and they can be equally not good sometimes. So.
But I love that you're authentic with your students, because I think that makes it easier for them to relate to you and to make that goal for themselves. Like, okay, I need to save this much money and I can do it. And you make it real for them. And that's super important. Yeah. If you could share one lesson that you hope that your students take away when they leave your class or when they graduate from school, what is that one lesson that you hope that they'll learn?
Money can be scary, or it can be something that you don't worry about. Because I feel like I also teach relationships and child development, all of those things. And we know that majority of divorces end because of finances. Mm-hmm. And so if you can have a relationship with money that is healthy and positive for yourself, but then be willing to have conversations about money with other people before you get into a more romantic and intimate relationship, money is not going to be something that is scary and daunting. It's going to be something that works for you and can make your life more enjoyable, and not something that like looms over you like this dark cloud. Because I feel like a lot of people, especially a lot of people in America, we really struggle with this dark cloud looming over us, of whether that's our credit score or debt, or just like the daily transactions of money can be very scary and can actually really impact your health because you stress over it. Mm-hmm. And so starting money off with having a really good, healthy relationship of what does it look like for you? How do you feel about it? And making sure that any relationships that you do go into, you have that open conversation with. I think that that's so, so important, because one, hopefully then you don't get divorced. Hopefully you find somebody that you want to spend life with. Hopefully you have children if that is something that they want to do in their life, and that they pass those healthy relationships with money onto their kids. And they can continue that and kind of break some cycles of nasty relationships with money. I just feel like a lot of people have really negative relationships with money, and I know I did, which is why I'm so passionate about that. Like, I used to stress out a lot about it, and I want students to just have a really healthy mindset about money and how it can impact their future.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you, Sahvanna, for taking the time to chat with us today, for joining our Credit Chat Live, and for the important work that you are doing. We're here to support you, but also we want to learn from you. And we hope that we offer sessions that you could learn from us, but we want to learn from you. So conversations like this are so important for us. We can take back the wealth of knowledge that we learned from you in this and start to have conversations about how we can better serve these communities. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Credit Chat Live. I hope you stay tuned and look for more episodes from this conference specifically, because we're going to speak with more fantastic teachers like Sahvanna. We have, I believe, 4 other interviews that we hope that you'll listen to and learn from, and find ways to support these teachers in the important work that they're doing for financial literacy. Thank you so much.